Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel Tech Tutor. So for today's video, I thought I would do something a little different. I know I've gotten comments before where somebody said, walk me through how you did this, where did you learn this, things to that extent. So this video may be a bit longer. We're just going to try to do something basic where we look at some of the resources I usually use, show you how I could kind of discover new project resources and set something up. So for this particular project, we're going to work with Spring Security and try to tie in something like a Google login. I know that a lot of people usually ask me questions about my previous Google video. It was a lot. There was a front end, a back end. So let's just keep this one simple. I'll just show you how in Spring you can tie in a token from a redirect and it will give you authentication. I'm not going to really build up too much of a front end or anything like that. In fact, usually Spring kind of gives you something out of the box. So again, read the documentation and let's just see how this goes. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So for the first resource, what I really like to use a lot is Spring Initialzr. And Spring Initialzr is a website where they will automatically generate a project for you. And all you got to do is just select some configurations here. So for this particular project, since we're doing like a Google login, we'll just call this com.example.google. And then I like Maven more than Gradle personally. I know Gradle gives you a lot of power, but for beginners, we're probably not going to do that. You could use Java, Kotlin, or Groovy. I prefer Java. Usually I don't go with the latest version. Usually I go with the one that's also not a snapshot. So we'll just go ahead and use Spring Boot version 2.7.0. I'm going to prefer to use a jar for my project personally. And we'll use Java version 17. So we'll just pretty much keep a lot of these defaults that are already selected. So moving on, one of the dependencies that I use for almost all of my projects is going to be Spring Web because I like to run a Spring Boot web server. So this is where it automatically spins up on localhost 8080. You can also configure your project and it will end up running on a different port if you change that in your application properties or application.yaml if you change it to YAML like I prefer to. And the other one, let's go ahead and see what they have for OAuth. So they've got an OAuth2 client. They have this Okta one, which looks like it requires a different version of Spring Boot. So not that, but also we're doing Google here. And there's OAuth resource server. So for this one, this is about using an OAuth resource server features. I'm not looking to do that really. I'm just looking to integrate with the Google login. Other projects I've read about before, this is how I have a little bit of an idea. Usually there's some sort of library. It's just exchanging the token that Google gives you back when you go to their website and you indicate some sort of redirect URL. It ends up storing that in a cache somewhere or in your local cookies or whatever it may do. So with Spring, I'm sure that if you really want to know all the details, you can read their documentation, but just know that they usually handle a lot of that for you. So it may seem really simple because they're handling a lot of those steps for you. But if you really want to know the details, you can either kind of dig into the code by control clicking into it or read the documentation. So since these are the two choices I have, I'm going to use the OAuth2 client, and then I will just click generate. All right, so I have generated that. I will open that folder. I'm going to go ahead and extract that folder to, let's just put it to my base folder underneath my C drive. So it's just Google extract. All right, here it is. Now I am going to open it in IntelliJ. So I'm going to say open, and I put it right underneath of this directory. So now it's going to find Google. There it is. And looks like when I extracted, I forgot it's a folder within a folder. So you don't want to open that folder. You want to open the second one. You could even copy or cut it and then paste it to really make it not a folder within a folder. But just go ahead and click OK. I'm going to trust this project. And here you go. Now you can see it's already starting to pull in the dependencies. So if it hasn't, or you've changed some of your dependencies in your POM file, you could just click this refresh looking button to reload all of the dependencies. and just making sure that I did not cut this off in the video. So I'm going to be looking back and forth a little bit because I have a widescreen, and so really you can't see my mouse once it goes past right here. But yeah, I can swing this over. So what I did to bring up that Maven tab is I click this, and so I will go back over here, build this back up. I'm going to shrink the window here. So looking at the POM file, you can see that what Spring Initialzr did for you, which is pretty nice, it brought in and created this POM file for you. So when you're using Spring Boot, you're typically going to have a parent, which in this case is Spring Boot starter parent 2.7.0, which if you remember, I selected that. Well, it was selected by default, really. And what this is going to do is it's going to manage your dependencies. And then you see how it's at the Java property of 17. It's got that Spring Boot Starter Web that I asked for, as well as the OAuth2 client. And it looks like it also brought in Spring Boot Starter Test. So if you want to, you can also dig in and see more about this particular dependency. You can control click it. And now you can kind of see what this particular dependency consists of. So it actually has like Spring Security config, Spring Security core, Spring Security OAuth2 client, and Spring Security OAuth2, I guess you'd say Jose probably. So coming back here, just know that you can dig into there, and also you can dig into this parent too. This parent is what is setting a lot of your version numbers for your dependencies. So if you notice back here, I didn't need to set a version number for Spring Boot Starter OAuth2 client because it's taking it from the 2.70 parent POM to set the version. All right, so more on that later. If you really want to know more, just let me know in the comments. But just know that's basically it. We've brought in the dependencies that we would like, and it has already created a application class for us. It is annotated with Spring Boot application. So really, I can actually go ahead and run this if I wanted to. It's going to spin up a server on localhost 8080. So as you can see, here it goes, and Tomcat started on port 8080. So you can obviously configure a lot more, as I believe I've shown you in other videos, by setting different properties in your application properties file. I'm going to rename this to YAML because I prefer the YAML style of properties. All right, and so now move on from there. Let's see what else we can do to get connected with our Google login. And so, if you're me or yourself and you're thinking, okay, what do I want to look for? Well, as I explained, let's go back here real quick for a second. When I dug into, as an example, Spring Boot OAuth2 client, we saw some of the dependencies it was using. So Spring Security. So I'm probably going to want to look up the Spring docs for Spring Security and just read up what kind of configurations they might suggest or if they have any sample code. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So in Google, you could just do something like Spring Security docs OAuth2. All right. So you got this one, you got that one. Let's try this one first, see what we got. All right, so see if this has the docs we want. Actually, I might go back because I prefer, yeah, here's what I'm looking for. So this particular link, Spring.io, you can go here. It's going to tell you more about the releases. I'm used to this page, but if you have dug around in Spring Docs enough, really you're looking to try to get to a page that starts with docs.spring.io. Let's look at this one. All right, and then if I click OAuth2 login, let's try core configuration. Okay, here we go, Google. So it tells you exactly, that's our first example, is with Google. So Google to implementation, let's see, follow the instructions on the OpenID Connect page starting in the section setting up OAuth2. All right, so if I click that, actually I want to keep this page open. Let's go ahead and open this in a new tab. All right, so one of the things is that when you are setting up Google, and I've done this before, but I think it may have changed, so we're just following the steps here to see if anything is out of date, because obviously over time, any code that I write might be completely obsolete as things get deprecated and they change how the things work. So you usually want to use whatever documentation is associated with your Spring version and kind of follow the instructions there to make sure that everything works correctly. So if you try this code, I don't know, years from now, and it doesn't work, just know that you might need to go check and see what has changed in Spring or Google or whatever it is you're integrating with. So before you can use your application, for login, you must set up a project. Okay, so this is looking pretty similar to what I'm used to, but yeah, so it's telling you to go to this link, set your redirect URI, and optionally customize the branding information that your user sees on the user consent screen. You can also use the API console to create a service account, enable billing. Okay, we don't really need that for this video. We're just trying to look at hooking up basic Google Auth login. So I will right click again, open this in a new tab. All right, so let's do this one more time. I cut the video so that way I could log out of the account that I was in and log into the account that I actually want to use for this. So let's go ahead and open it in a new tab. All right, so now here is what the Google Cloud Platform page does look like. And let's go back here for a second. So now it is telling me we want to go to the credentials page. So let's go to the credentials page. And it looks like I actually had this from another video. I don't even remember which one it was. It was a video back in April. But we're going to make a new OAuth2 client. So we'll do the, I believe it's going to be create credentials. Click the name of the credential or pencil ID, set the redirect URL. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create credentials, and we're going to do an OAuth client ID. All right, so ours is a web application, and here's some redirect URIs. So in order for us to figure out where we want to redirect, let's read the Spring documentation and see if it tells us somewhere in here. So, all right, we have started setting this up. This is where we left off. Going here, and here it is, the redirect URI. So the redirect URI, application after the authenticated. So after it's been authenticated, it needs to know where to redirect to. Right here, it's telling you. So if you're running it on localhost, like we will be for our example, here it is. If you're running it on a different server, it's going to obviously change. So let's just take this one because this is all we need. And so add that as the redirect URI. Having a little trouble here. I don't know why I cannot click it. Oh, it wants me to close the call out. There we go. Okay. You can't actually even see the call out. I think it's probably off the screen, but there was a little bubble on the top right for notification on this page and it wanted me to close it. Okay, so now it will take 5 minutes to a few hours for the settings to take effect. I don't think it actually takes that long, or at least not back when I first did this for my other video, if you haven't seen it. All right, so I will probably delete this after I am done with the video because I don't need some random account getting a bunch of logins, but here you'll see your client ID and your client secret. So now let's go back to the Spring documentation. Here it is. It's very easy. Look, I mean, sometimes the documentation is just follow it from top to bottom. So if you have a YAML like I do, you just copy this. So we'll click that, and now we copied to the keyboard, or copied it to our clipboard rather. Let me open this back up. Now let's go to our YAML file. So I'll just go ahead and paste this. All right, you can also click into these properties sometimes, I guess not particularly for this one. But anyways, Spring Security, OAuth2, client registration, Google, client ID, client secret. So you take that client secret, which we had on this page, or the ID first rather. So let's take that, we'll paste that, and then we will take the secret. We'll go back here, we will paste that. Okay, so now that should be potentially it. Let's go back to the documentation for a second. All right, place the values, boot up the application. You'll be redirected on the Google link. Yeah, so sounds like it'll automatically redirect you to log in if you're not logged in. And there's just one other thing that I want to find. Typically, you can inject your token. This is something I just know from digging through docs. The last time I made a video a while ago, I want to say it's an auth token or something to that effect. Like the authentication token. So I'm just trying to control F through here. Let's see if it's in the advanced configuration. Now, I'm only doing this because I just want to show you that it worked and that you can get the token. This is saving you a little bit of time because you're not seeing me have to struggle through. Oh, here we go. Mapping user authorities. After a user successfully authenticates with OAuth2 provider, OAuth2 user get authorities or OIDC get authorities may be mapped to a new set of grant authority instances, which will be supplied to the token, which completing the authentication. So typically with things like this, as you'll read through the documentation or you want to go to some of their source code, you'll see where they might use it. And that's kind of how I figured these things out. But also just from experience of me using Spring for a while, I already know that they usually allow you to inject the security token into your controller, so at the topmost layer. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're just going to put this in our controller, and that will allow us to grab the token and the information that it has once we log in. So let's go ahead and try to do that as well. So we'll make a controller class. So we'll just call this sample controller. And we're going to at rest controller at request mapping. So we're just going to make this the base path. And then we're going to want to create a get mapping because I'm just going to put this at the at the base. So it'll be literally at like the opening page. And so then I will return, let's see if an object will work. And then we're going to say current user because that's what we're trying to get. I forgot what it was called. Let's see, it's the OAuth2 authentication token. So go back here. And as I said, typically when you have a token like this, they will give you a way to grab it just by, they automatically inject it into something like your controller. So now OAuth authentication token. All right, and then let's see, I think we could potentially just return it. So let's see, principal, credentials, attribute. Let's see what's under here. So get principal, I can control click in here, accept credentials, principal. Seeing if I can find something interesting. Oh, here we go, attributes. I believe this is what it is. I mean, what you could do is you could run this with debugging, and then you could literally just kind of dig on into this object. Maybe I'll do that after we start the application. So you can see how I kind of already had an idea of where to go digging. But even if you didn't have an idea, I'll show you through debugging how you can kind of just quickly run through the object and dig into it without having to try to figure out which properties or methods are available to you. All right, so we're just going to return whatever it gives us for attributes, which happens to be a map actually. So let's return a map, and it should automatically just show this on the page when we log in. So let's go ahead and run with debugging. So I can put a breakpoint here after. All right. So now let's go ahead and go to localhost, and we'll do 8080. As you can see, it already redirected me. I've got a few accounts here. I'm just gonna block out these other accounts that are here, so that way I'm not getting a bunch of emails randomly. But you can see this email is fine. This is the one I've set up for this account. So we'll just use the not another tech tutor at gmail.com. And it looks like it worked. Okay, so as you can see, when you log in and it redirects you, here are all of the properties that you're getting from that map. So it gave you back the attributes. So going back here, you could see as an example that the given name property is tech, because I called it just tech tutor. Name is tech tutor. You could see the email. Let's see what else we got here. It's telling you where the picture came from, so you could potentially store the user's pictures. But as you can see, lots of information that Google is giving you. And The thing is that you could probably select other properties that you want from your Google Auth, and that they'll have to acknowledge, when they use your app, they want to give you permission to these things. But just with the defaults, this is what you're getting. So you can at least see the username and their email. And so this gives you a way to log in. And then going further from here, you could end up passing this token along and making sure they're authenticated. It's already by default redirecting them to your login page when they're not logged in. Now you can have other settings, so you could go dive through Spring Security and block certain URLs, but allow certain URLs to be open without auth, things like that. But a lot of what you're seeing here is just the defaults. And if you want to understand the defaults more without just kind of figuring out by trial and error, you can read the documentation. They typically will tell you what they're setting by default. But yeah, looks like that's all it really took. So now you already have a quick, easy login for Google. And to add other ones, I'm pretty sure you're just adding another client and then putting like Facebook or GitHub or anything to that effect. Just go read the documentation. It's pretty simple. Real quick, let's put a breakpoint here so that way you can see what I was talking about also. So we'll refresh the page. I believe that'll hit our breakpoint. It did. All right. So make sure you can see this. Like pull up my stream real quick. Yep. Okay. It's not cut off from the screen. All right. So you can see how if I just kind of expand that auth token object, it has principal, it has authorities, details. We were grabbing the principal, so if I expand that, now you can see authorities. Looks like this tells you that they are a user. This is the scope that you've asked for, so they've granted you access to their email and profile. And if I collapse that, attributes, which is what I was just giving back to our URL, or to our front end really, which is just a basic, just returning the JSON payload. So as you can see here, here's all those same properties that I had already seen on our Firefox browser here. So again, if you don't know how to fetch what you want, either run it with debugging and start digging and then change your code to return exactly what you want, or go read the Spring documentation. That's pretty much what I do. So now you have a better idea how I dig and learn and figure things out in Java Spring. And that's really all there is to it. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. If there's anything that you want to see in future videos, please let me know. And let me know if this is a better style. If you really liked for me to kind of just walk you through figuring out how to set something up in Spring. I'm not sure if you prefer this or where I just kind of cut out all of the me digging around and trying to make it very quick, clear, dirty code for you to take from GitHub. I always thought that was easier, but if this is what you like better, I can also make more videos like this. So thank you again, and take a moment to like and subscribe for future content.